Both of us would be, going across the street, assuming as if riding a bicycle, and we would run to his home. And once we reach his home, the other boy would go into his home, and I would be stopped from entering the home. I have to sit outside. When I was growing up, I wouldn't be allowed to go to the temple that everyone else would go to. There were times I used to swim 200, 300 meters across the pond. There would be tree within the lake on which the waterborne birds would lay eggs in their nest. Sometimes I'll have to sell the egg to purchase a pen or pencil. As a family, we used to sleep multiple nights without food. When I say difficult times, it's a lot more than what possibly the people of this generation could possibly imagine.
For someone in these circumstances, how did you dare to dream beyond it?
Oftentimes, I would just bang my head on the wall or into the rice bags and weep heavily. And I would always look for a solution. How do I come out of it? How do I lift my family out of it and whatnot? And always the answer would come to, you have to get educated. I won't die as another ordinary man. I'm here to make a difference.
Vanakkam, Ananthanji. Thank you so much for making the time. Thank you for being on Bharat Varta.
Well, namaskaram, Roshan. Great pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. I know we wanted to have this chat for quite some time. Glad that finally I could make it to Bangalore and we can sit down and have a conversation. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. And, before we begin, shout out to Ambi as well, my friend who made this happen. When I first heard your story at the Tamilpreneur event, I found it really inspiring, and I felt that, more people should listen to it. And so we want to use this podcast as a platform to share the story with a lot more people.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ambi. He's a great guy. Ambi is a great guy.
What I really want to do this podcast is to share your story, and hopefully people are inspired to do better irrespective of the backgrounds, where they're from in India, what social background, etc. Right? So take us back to your childhood. What was it like growing up in Vishwanathapuri?
Well, it was a difficult childhood, I would say. A famous Tamil poetess Avayar would say, "Kodidu kodidu ilamayil varumai," that is versus poverty in youth. In my case, it was just not poverty, it's not just hunger. It was also I was torn between hunger and caste conflicts. Let me give you some example. When I was at school, I was a class topper, and the school teacher would, during the midday, he would have a couple of us to go to his home, fetch something. It may be a letter, it may be something for him and whatnot. And both of us would be, going across the street, assuming as if riding a bicycle, and we would run to his home. And once we reach his home, the other boy would go into his home, and I would be stopped from entering the home. I have to sit outside because I'm from so-and-so. When I was growing up, I wouldn't be allowed to go to the temple that everyone else would go to. So when I say difficulty, it is difficult times. It's a lot more than what possibly the people of this generation could possibly imagine. That is how it was the condition at the village. I come from a family of agricultural laborers. We owned quarter acre of land, but that is not sufficient to do anything with, even to earn basic rice or that you would need for the family. So we're a family of agricultural laborers. When I was not in school, I would be required to rear the cattle. We had a couple of buffaloes and cow, and I would have to rear them, and wouldn't have anything to eat all day. So I would have to pluck some brahmi leaves, what we call vallarekire in Tamil. That is on the shore of the streams. That is what my lunch would be. Some days I would have to climb up the palm tree, and whatever you get, that is what my lunch would be. There are days that I would jump into the stream, into the check dam to catch some fish. And luckily we would catch and say, come home. There wouldn't be any condiment even to cook the fish. So I would climb up some tamarind tree, pluck some tamarind, and get some chili on the way. We make some food out of it. That is how it used to be. There were times I used to swim 200, 300 meters across the pond. It's a village, there will be lakes and ponds and whatnot. There would be tree within the lake on which the waterborne birds would lay eggs in their nest there. So I would swim 200 meters, 300 meters into the lake just to reach the tree and take those couple of eggs. And sometimes I'll have to sell the egg to purchase a pen or pencil, whatnot. So as a family, we used to sleep multiple nights without food. So as someone from that family, I was rather forced to go as an agricultural laborer. My elder brother was a good student as well. He was a class topper as well. That is what I heard. But he was actually forced into agricultural farming and work, and I was also forced, but I was very adamant that I would go to school. And so when I was, that was when I was in middle school. So when I was progressing to 9th grade, 10th grade, now I would get into, fireworks factory, go as a construction laborer. It was that time the only sugar mill or only industry of that district, Tharani Sugar Mills, was being constructed. And I would lift up the cement bag all day, 40 kg.
This was when you were in 9th or 10th?
And when I was in 9th and 10th. On weekends, I would go and work in that construction. And I think I would make 6 rupees or something for carrying that cement bag all day. And I would use that money to purchase cloth and whatnot. By the time I could I could wear a pair of chappal was after I finished 12th standard. By the time I went to any city outside of my village was after my 12th standard. That was when I went to Chennai to appear for AIMS entrance examination, and also to appear for engineering entrance examination and whatnot. So I used to walk from my village to school. And oftentimes you would be stopped by people from, I come from Tirunelveli district. Now it is Tenkasi district, but erstwhile Tirunelveli district is the epicenter of all the caste conflicts and violences that you could hear of in the 90s. So when you walk from your home to school, often you would be afraid whether you would be stopped by someone. Oftentimes people would stop you, threaten you, intimidate you. Then even after going to college, when I was at Trichy REC, every time that I used to come home from Trichy, from Rajamani bus stand, I used to carry a sickle in my bag, not to attack anyone, but just to protect me, because that was the heights of the time where the caste conflicts was happening in big time in that district. So it was between hunger and oppression that you cannot enter places, that you would be threatened, intimidated, beaten, whatnot. That was the childhood. So when I say, the childhood was a difficult time that possibly the children of today cannot possibly imagine, hopefully this gives a picture of what it was and being in a village, coming from that kind of family.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult listening to it. I mean, I grew up in Bangalore, and to a large extent we're cocooned from all of this stuff. Really, the kind of stuff that you talked about on the caste oppression and so on, hunger and poverty is bad enough, but you layer that with something like caste oppression, and you have massive issues, right, in terms of your self-conception, your image, your self-esteem, and so on. Really hard times. For someone in these circumstances, how did you dare to dream beyond it? Because quite often, whether it's the people around you or whether it's just the situation, I mean, it forces you to stay where you are. What were those moments, or what were those key influences that taught you to sort of look beyond whatever was happening around you?
Well, there are a couple of things. Oftentimes, I would just bang my head on the wall or into the rice bags and weep heavily. and I would always look for a solution. How do I come out of it? How do I lift my family out of it and whatnot? And always the answer would come to, oh, you have to get educated. You have to land a good job, and education is the only way to land good job. And there would be, people would say there would be some inspirational figures or leaders, local leaders and whatnot. There was none of that for me those days. But I'm thankful for my teachers, my school teachers, who were guiding force those days. They would keep telling me that, always உள்ளுவதெல்லாம் உயர் உள்ளல், always look for, larger thing. And I would say there are two poems that was actually constantly driving me then, and it is even driving now. It is the poems of Mahakavi Bharatiyar, who says, Peridinum Peridikkel, aim for the great, larger than the greatest, is what you would say. And also there was another poem, it say, தேடிச்சோறு நிதந்தென்று பல சிறு கதைகள் பேசி வேடிக்கை மனிதராய் விழுந்துடுவேன் என நினைத்தாயோ பராசக்தி. There's Mahakavi Bharati, which is basically, I won't die as another ordinary man. I'm here to make a difference. And so that thought was continuously running in me, and I was an avid reader. I used to read a lot of newspapers, books and whatnot. Even when I was at 6th standard, I was the one who used to open the public library in the morning. This is on the weekends, and I would be the last boy to even to close the door of the library. So I would be reading any kind of books that comes across me. So I used to read a lot of things about, say for an example, Dr. Ambedkar, and a lot of people in the history who made things possible. So it was quite clear education was the only way out, and so I was focused on that.
Right. You mentioned, your elder brother was equally good at studies, but he was forced into farm labor. Education is that big ticket out of these circumstances, right? It is the single driver for social mobility for Indians, like irrespective of where you are, right? And so from Vishwanatha Peri, you went to Trichy, right? Like from a pond to a slightly bigger pond, right? Or perhaps an ocean, right? In relative terms. What was the NIT Trichy experience like? Were you an amazing student there, or you kind of struggled to cope, and what happened afterwards?
It was, the size of the campus itself was hugely intimidating, especially for a boy who was coming from a tiny village, who has never seen a city and big campuses and whatnot. So it was hugely intimidating. And as you walk into the hostel, you would run into your roommate would be someone from Don Bosco, Chennai, who would be, speaking only in English. And you would be seeing other students who would be dropped by their parents coming by BMW and Benz, and where all I got used to was a Bullock cart. So, it was hugely intimidating. And for someone from Tamil medium, you wouldn't speak English. So they would, tease you. And there were times that I wanted to run away from that college. I did, and
oh, you did?
I did. I went home. I was there for a week or so. But then there are some noble souls who guided me and said, no, don't worry about it. Go back to college and whatnot. And there was also time of ragging was prevalent, so you're not used to it. I mean, being in violence, that is one part, but you want to get away from that. So I was not a great student when I entered the college, I would say. I was a good student. I was a topper. I did well at the district level and whatnot when I was in a +2, and that was from a rural school. But the moment you entered college, it was very intimidating. But the resolve to learn, the resolve to land in a good job eventually is what kept me there.
Right.
But I had my own distractions when I was in college, and then suddenly when you are exposed to something, you want to, try everything, you want to know what it is and whatnot. That was a distraction, but it was fine. It was fine.
And so what I hear is you joined C-DAC after that. You
Correct.
came to Namma Bengaluru,
Yes.
Right? You were here for a bit, then worked at a startup that got acquired by Intel.
Correct.
And then you spent 20-something years in Intel.
Correct.
Majority of that in the US.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So if Vishwanatha Peri to Trichy was sort of a shift, then Trichy to Bangalore and then Bangalore to US would have been a multifold jump, right, for you. So what was that US experience like?
I didn't want to go to US, honestly. The only reason I went to US was to
That's
earn
a rare
something.
thing to say.
It was actually.
I mean,
I was quite happy in Bangalore. So moving from Trichy to Bangalore was a natural progression. We were about 50 people in my classroom at REC Trichy. I think at least about 45 of them went to US to do higher studies. We were probably 4 or 5 who came to Bangalore. We were working in C-DAC, Wipro, Infosys and whatnot. And I was making good money for that time here. And after a few years from C-DAC, I moved to a startup, and the startup was paying me really well. This was back in 2000 time frame. I think I was making close to $1 lakh per month. It was a good money.
Wow.
So I didn't want to go to US. In fact, I had 3 H1 offers and visa printed and whatnot, and I kept it for 1 year that I wouldn't go to US because I always wanted to go back to my family. I wanted to purchase a few acres of land and wanted to give to my father, and I wanted to see, from being a farm laborer to a farm owner. The joy of seeing him, switching on that motor pump shed for the first time was actually, beyond anything. Nothing else could have brought me that kind of joy. So, when the outer ring road was being constructed here in Bangalore, the likes of whatever you see in outer ring road today, none of that was existing about 25 years ago. I could have possibly purchased a few plots of land with the money that I had, but I invested that money in my village to purchase a few acres of land for my dad. Hindsight, probably I made a mistake. I would have made a lot more money if I had invested in Bangalore. But, nothing could give you that kind of satisfaction than what you could make your parents feel proud and happy. So that is it. But going to US, it was out of necessity. Like I said, it was for 1 year I had been saying no. I was making a presentation here. GM from US Intel was here, and I was making a presentation on a project plan to him. And then after that, he asked me, why come over? And I said, thank you. But even his offer, I was waiting for 6 months before I take it up. And finally, there was a day that came. I had to quickly make some money to get my sister married. And I wanted to have that marriage in a good fashion and, need money. So took the call to go to US, and I was supposed to be there only for 11 months. To the extent that when I was signing up a lease at the apartment complex, they said, if you sign 12 months lease, we will give you 1 month free rent. But my visa was stamped only for 11 months. I said, 11 months itself is too much. Probably I'll be here only for 6 months, but because that's all the money I need. I don't need your 1 month free rent. I'll just sign for 11 months and go back to India. Hindsight, 20 years passed in US. Things went on. There was a greater opportunities, a lot of respect for what I was doing. I started, leading projects, and then my managers were very supportive. Plenty of opportunities, and then I wanted to make a little more money. I always had an eye on getting into public life and to get into politics and whatnot. And in order for someone to get into politics, I always felt you have to be self-reliant. You have to have some money to care for yourself. So I felt, okay, now I have satisfied my family's need. Now let me go and make some money so that I will have it before I enter in politics. So that kept me there, and unfortunately it went long for 2 decades.
Yeah. America is truly the land of opportunity that way, right? I mean,
Yes.
as long as you can make money for them, they don't really care who you are, where you're from,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. So it's a sea change from the kind of circumstances you grew up in. So perhaps, that's also something that kind of kept you there for as long, right? Okay, so that seems like a fairly linear path for you. You joined Intel, stayed there 20 years and so on, but you also took a small diversion, right? And this is a very interesting thing, because when I learned that, you became a realtor in the US, that was a shock as well, because, typical realtor in the US, and there's a certain demographic, there's a certain person that you imagine, right? You don't imagine an Indian from, the village here to go and sell real estate there in the US. So how did that happen?
So the property ownership is American dream, and purchasing a property is a different thing when it, compared to what is in India. When someone purchases a property in US, they always look at a single most thing: are you better off buying a property or renting a property? Here in Bangalore, if you say an apartment would cost like say 1 crore rupee, and it would go for only 20,000 rupees in rent. So the 1 crore rupee in bank deposit will probably earn you more than this 20,000 rent. So, we don't see it that way. We see it as a property ownership here. There, you would always see, financially whether it is a right question, right?
So you look at it
decision
as an
to
asset.
make. Yes. And I was always good with number. While I was in US, I also did MBA in finance. I was a class topper there at Arizona State University.
As usual.
So when my friends were purchasing property, I would go along with them and I would guide them in terms of structuring the mortgage, looking at the right property, valuing the property. What would be the valuation today? What would be the valuation 5 years from now? Are you better off buying or renting? What would be the the down payment that you should be doing as an asset management and whatnot? And I was also, naturally good at looking at property because I don't know whether I was in construction field previously as a construction worker, and I'm just kidding. So, there was value, and oftentimes my friends would ask me, why don't you start your own real estate brokerage and mortgage brokerage? I was listening for a year, and one fine day I started because anyway I was helping someone else, and there was plenty of money in that business. You earn about 3 to 6% of the transaction value by being an advisor. So I felt it was a great opportunity and entered into it. And this is the time when I was also writing patents for Intel. Some of the latest interconnect technologies that you see in the market, in the devices, in the systems, in the data centers today, particularly something called CXL. That patent was written by me back in 2012. We were a team of 4 people who wrote that patent. So it was the time that I was also actively working at that company and writing patent, doing projects. So I also jumped into it. I liked what I was doing as real estate, and quickly in a matter of 3 years, I became top 1% real estate broker in America. This
Seems like a consistent theme with your life.
Well, touch wood. America has about 3 million realtors, real estate brokers. So out of the 3 million, I was rated top 1%.
Amazing.
Because there was always, whatever I do, I would do it with utmost sincerity. I would. So, naturally business was coming. And it was also a growing Indian population in the city that I was living in, Portland, Oregon. A flurry of activities, a lot of transaction happening, and quickly captured about 30-40% of the market there. So it went well, so went on.
Okay, so everything is going well. Why did you come back? I mean, I know you always wanted to go back into to your village and get into public life and so on. But what was that one moment that prompted you to return?
Well, I wanted to return back. I always wanted to return back. I always wanted to get into politics or in public life. Because the kind of hunger and poverty and the issues that I saw, I was pretty convinced that only a policymaker can make a difference and can make the true intervention. Only a public servant like a district collector or an SP could make a true intervention in the society. When it comes to development, I thought only a politician can bring in a true transformation and development. Because you can be a multi-billionaire, you can be throwing in billions of dollars, but end of the day, take an example, Bill Gates for an example, 30-40 billion in his foundation, and throwing in money in India and South Africa and whatnot. With due respect for all that foundation is doing, I do not see a tangible difference that is making in a rural place like say in my district or anywhere in India for an example. Whereas a policymaker can make a decision to go and construct a dam, the district or taluk that I come from, it was a flourishing agriculture land until 1965. It's a drought-prone area for the last 50 years only because a dam, a weir was breached in heavy rain, and that is not rebuilt for 50 years, for an example.
Wow.
And suddenly the water that was flowing from Western Ghats all the way to the Bay of Bengal, and it has suddenly stopped, and people had to look for alternative means for their own living. in the last 3 or 4 decades. A policymaker can make a difference in terms of negotiating with whoever you have to and build that ramp, right? So even when I was in US, I used to come to India at least twice a year, and I used to go and interact with people. And every single time I return back to US, there is a heavy heart and longing in me that I should come back and do whatever I can to make a difference. While I was in US, since getting into public life was always in me, and since I couldn't do it, I had my younger brother get into public life, and in 2006 time frame, he became a union councillor, and 5 years later he became a district councillor, and then 5 years later he became an MLA. This is my own younger brother. So I was trying to do what I was hoping to do through him. So we could make some certain progress in the assembly constituency when he was an MLA, including exposing smart classrooms, building dams in bridges and whatnot. In 2021 election, he lost by a very low margin, by 1% of vote or something. And that is when I decided, okay, this is time for me to wrap up everything over there and come to India. So I was looking for my time, and it took some time, but
Right. It is certainly an unconventional choice, right? I mean, because when you talk to young people, they're jaded about politics, They want to give back to the society. They'll probably volunteer at a non-profit, work at an NGO, or perhaps think that, let me just create some wealth for myself, and then perhaps, I will help people around me and so on, right? Or I'll donate to some organization. Nobody thinks of rolling up their sleeves and getting into the rough and tumble of daily politics as such. But politics has such a huge impact on people, as you mentioned, right? Simple things like a dam, right, could turn the fortunes of thousands of people, right? So what would you say to youth who are sort of jaded about politics, but also nurse this ambition of serving people? Why should they get into politics?
Well, I think of India, it's a land of youth, I think of it. Unlike in Western countries or in Europe or in China or Australia, where the average age or median age is above 40. When it comes to India, it is 27. There are a lot of youngsters who are actually making great things. I see so many startups, deep tech startups that is happening from Bangalore, from Chennai, from Pune and whatnot. They are making a difference through what they can in the society. They are being a creator, being an entrepreneur. They are already making a difference. So in a way, they are actually helping the society. I can relate to them in terms of the hesitation they have to get directly into active politics, because it takes a thick skin. People will bully you, people will belittle you, people will laugh at you, all of that. And there has to be anyone who is... Politics is also costly. It's expensive. You have to go from place to place. You have to have a car. You need to fill gas to the car. Oftentimes, people will come to you for help. They'll say, help for medical care, for an example, help for paying for tuition, for an example, some accidental expenses and whatnot. As someone who is in the public figure, they don't care whether you have money or not. They come with the hope that I go to Roshan and he'll be able to solve my problem. So you should also have access to the resources. If you don't have yourself, you should have the access to resources. And if you're not, then you would be empty-handed. And this is the reality of the politics, especially in the rural area. And I face it in the last 3 years. So you have to have thick skin, you have to have a lot of conviction, and you have to be self-reliant. If it takes some time for these youngsters to have all these few things, so be it. There are, if anyone was coming to politics as an youngster with a hope or with the hope that they would become a corporator or MLA and MP soon, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. This is a long game. This is a marathon, so they should be prepared, and they have to take the time to train themselves to be prepared for this long game. Right. So there is an aversion from the youngsters to get into politics, is because first of all they have to provide for themselves. In a lot of cases, they have to provide for their families, especially when it comes to rural places. There are so many first-gen graduates. their family, their parents, their siblings have a lot of expectation on them that they would go and earn and provide for the family. It's simply impossible for them to get into politics.
Right.
But what they can do is they can, as you rightly put, as they get into this likes of NGO, they can also make a change or a difference in the society. Eventually, if that leads them to official political work, well and good. This is a reality in our place. Not everyone can get into politics.
No, it's less of a career and more of a calling, right?
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. And you mentioned that thick skin, right? Very, very important. Not just to have a good heart, but also a strong stomach for the rejections that you're going to face along the way. Can you give us some examples, stories, anecdotes, etc., of trying to make change in the system and facing the brunt of the system, the way it works, and so on, and being able to succeed against those odds? Because what people want is optimism, right? That change is possible. So someone like yourself, I think is a great example to that, right? Any examples that you could recall and that you can share?
So one of the things I did immediately after coming back to India was starting a non-profit NGO called Voice of Tenkasi Foundation. Because I approach things as taking it on positive spirit and show people what we can possibly do instead of complaining about what is already not done or how corrupt the system is and who so and so the elected people are not doing and whatnot. I wanted to show even to them what we could possibly do. So then oftentimes that get into hiccups, failures and roadblocks and whatnot. For an example, at a women-only college, I would couple of speakers from Bangalore and Hyderabad to come in and expose them on the concept of design thinking, product planning, product design and whatnot. And Sridhar Vembu was also supposed to speak in that event. The event was planned for about 1,500 students. It was at a government college. And because I was associated to a political party, suppose the event is supposed to happen next morning at 10 a.m., they would call me at 12 in the night and cancel the event. And with all that planning that was happening, we are going to educate, we are going to enlighten so many students with possibilities and opportunities and whatnot. Then I had to wait, and then I was not giving up, and I said, no, I'll have it, and went and held it in a different place at a different time. One of the things that we did was distributing a lot of books to this government job aspirants. So I would go to library after library and distribute them the yearbook. Each book would cost, a set of books would cost like 1,000 rupees or more. So we went to a library and we were, as we finished distributing the book that evening, that librarian was suspended from service because inviting or having a BJP politician at the room and having a BJP politician to interact with students and career aspirants and whatnot. This discourages you. I can give a number of examples. We took a project of cleaning a pond or a lake, purifying the banks of the shores of the pond and whatnot. It was a big budget project, cost tons of lakhs, and we were willing to spend from our pocket, from our foundation and whatnot. But just to get a permission from the government, I was made to run from one office to another, and you would be forced to sit outside VAO office for the whole day, and we would be waiting for 3 hours, and that officer will come out during lunch hours and say, be here, I'll go have lunch and come back. And you would be waiting here, and that you're someone who lived in US, you had hundreds and thousands of engineers working with you, held multi-billion-dollar projects and whatnot, and finally here you would, even to spend your own money and do something, desilting the pond is what we were upon, and on our own expense, and you had to wait all day just to, and you wouldn't sign, and you would be made to run from one place to another. And especially if they know that you're gaining popular support, would stop, the watering station during summer. So we always wanted to do things in a systematic way. That I would approach the government officials that say, we are going to opening a free watering station at during summer, and you would say, go and get clearance from fire safety and go and get clearance from health safety and whatnot. Sure, sir, where do I go? And you go from one office and you will be sent to another office and another office. Their intention is to stop you from even distributing water. And that is how the system is. You have to fight all of that. And I'll give you a recent example from last week. Voice of Tenkasi Foundation, one of the motives is to be the voice of the voiceless. This has happened last month in a village at Thanjavur district where a set of women were, made to sell illicit liquor. And with the cartel of police, that is how it is reported. And there was a boy a young man who was a whistleblower. And he was arrested just for being a whistleblower, and he was tortured at police station. His sisters, two of them, one of them are engineering graduate, they went to the police station and asked, the police why they would do this injustice to him just for being a whistleblower, and they were actually abused. And these two will go out in front of the police station. They drank poison, and one of these girls, who was an engineering graduate, died. Shucks. And the other lady was in hospital for 21 days, and there was a heavy protest. And then the National SC/ST Commission took so much of it and issued a subpoena to the district collector and as well as to the DGP, asking them to appear before the commission for an inquiry. The commission would send the letter on 15th. The district collector would write a summon to the family of the victim on 17th. They were supposed to appear at the commission on 22nd, but the district administration would give the letter to these victim family only on 20th night. How would they go from a small village in Thanjavur district overnight to Delhi? And these are poor families, disadvantaged families. They can't even afford even train ticket. It only says that the government was doing everything to prevent them from appearing before the SC/ST Commission, to hide whatever it is. So the thing came to my attention, and we immediately purchased a flight ticket for them and sent them. And they were able to present their case in front of the commission, and we are actually expecting some good news from the commission. So being the voice of the voiceless is also one of the goals of Voice of Tenkasi Foundation. So I can go on listing multiple things that you would hit as roadblocks when you get to the field. But
what do you think is broken with the system, right? I mean, it shouldn't be this hard to cause change, right? I mean, I think people follow incentives, right? For the most part.
Yes.
Right? Do you think that we should redesign these incentives? Do you think it's just a function of being like a poor country where resources are scarce, or where people are playing the zero-sum game? Or what do you think is broken with the system?
There are two things. See, the fundamental reason for all the social evil is jobs, lack of jobs. Indian villages particularly are heavily dependent on unorganized work, farming work and whatnot. Every child is going to school and college now. But once they finish college, they are without formal jobs or jobs in organized sector. This is the one part. The other part is there are a set of people who actually, very hungry about power, and they want to be in power, and they would do anything, including purchasing votes with a heavy sum of money and whatnot. This is the other part. And this is where corporates, private sector and NGOs have to come in and paint the picture of possibility thinking to the youngsters. And that is where, when I said earlier, Voice of Tenkasi Foundation undertook the developmental politics, if I would say. The foundation is not necessarily doing politics, but the perspective of bringing development especially to the youngsters. So that is what we are on. And if there is similar organizations in every district need a champion organization to uplift, particularly the students. I mean, if you look at it, about more than 50% of the population is below 35 now. Right? In a state like Tamil Nadu, for an example, or I'll take my own district, there is about 15 lakh people in the district. There are at least about 3 lakh graduate students who are unemployed. Right?
Wow.
How do we they have a life. They have to lead a life. They have to get to marriage and family and whatnot. How do they? So one of the things that we initiated is after I came back to India, like I said, Voice of Tenkasi, a subsidiary organization of that is a Startup Tenkasi. So I held a massive or a huge scale startup event at Tenkasi probably for the first time for south of Tamil Nadu, and we brought in so many good startups, and showcasing those startups to those local students actually gave a lot of hope to them that they could possibly participate in those developments. We also conducted a series of AAML workshop, for an example. There are about 3 engineering colleges, about 10 arts and science colleges. I've gone to all of those colleges, interacted with all of them, exposing them to the kind of jobs that is available outside of Tenkasi district and how they should prepare themselves. So exposing to artificial intelligence and machine learning courses. And we wanted to make this change from school days itself. So we started what is called a spoken English class, and we trained thousands of students to be fluent in conversational English, for an example. And then jobs. So we have been conducting a series of training programs for government job aspirants and whatnot. So set up a lot of initiative that is happening there, aimed towards bringing in opportunities. And just last week we held a job fair at one of the engineering college this weekend. About 100 students from neighboring districts in Tenkasi district came in, and we could find placement for about 5 or 6 engineering graduates. That in itself is a huge, in terms of bringing hope to that student. So connecting urban opportunities to those rural students is one of the missions that we are undertaking. So coming back in terms of making change, I think every district need a champion organization who's connected to what is happening outside the district, outside the state, and at the global level, and see what they can possibly bring to that district.
Yeah. No, I think we need that sort of evolved federalism in some sense, right? I mean, like how perhaps states or even districts in the US vie for certain resources, business, investments, and so on and so forth. I think we need to have that sort of active ecosystem here as well, right? And not rely on everything to be top down for sure. It's an interesting choice of political party for you, right? I mean, in Tamil Nadu, BJP is not the obvious choice, right? Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, you could have a rationale for that, right? It's often caricatured as a Hindi party, right? Why choose BJP? What was the reason for that?
Well, I come from a traditional AADMK family. My father was a big fan of MGR, and I was an ardent fan of Madam Jayalalitha. I'll be very honest. If Madam Jayalalitha was here, I would have remained as an AADMK person than joining BJP. So after 2021 election, it was pretty clear that I wanted to enter politics, and looking at the leadership that was existing within Tamil Nadu, there is no way I could ever think of going to DMK. And I was looking for more, savvy leadership. And I felt ADMK was not, at that time, it was not the place. So going to, and Modiji was ever popular, and his popularity is growing at the global level. He has truly built up the reputation of India in a global scale, at the global arena. And then there was Annamalai, who was was a firebrand leader who was actually in 2021. So everything was actually confluencing, and it was a natural choice for me to get into BJP. And I always look for a startup. If you look at it, I was after C-DAC, I was part of a startup that got acquired at Intel. And even in our political beginning, I said my brother was a union councillor, district councillor, and whatnot. We started as part of Vijaykanth's party. Because I knew that it would be harder to enter something like ADMK and quickly get to a contest election or what. So I always wanted to be in a startup, which is basically gives a lot of opportunity. But it was also, by the time I was ready to enter politics, I was a big fan of Modi ji. It's not just the developmental aspects that he is bringing, the clean government, corruption-free government. So it was a very, very natural choice for me to get into BJP. And I never saw BJP as a Hindu party or Hindutva party. It was, after all, Vajpayee ji who made Abdul Kalam as the president of India. And when Kalam was about to be the president for the second term, it was Karunanidhi who opposed the candidature of Kalam ji. Right? So, and there are so many examples, right? So many examples. Even if you look at today, we are going on a tangential path, but I want to put this in perspective. BJP is not a anti-Muslim, anti-Christian party. It is not a Hindutva party. It is a nationalistic party. You look at the central government benefits that has gone out in the last 5 years, whether it is the PM Awas Yojana in terms of building houses, whether it is Jal Jeevan, whether it is the agri loans, whether it is Mudra loans for entrepreneurship. About 32 to 34% of those beneficiaries are minorities, are religious minorities in India. And if you look at the population, it's only about 19% is religious minority in India, whereas in terms of benefit, they are 32 to 36%. So it's much larger than their population size. So you cannot say BJP is anti-minority or a Hindutva party. The reality is different. Unfortunately, we have to do a lot more as a party in terms of busting the myth that it is a Hindu party or a Hindutva party. It cares for all.
Yeah, for sure. And irrespective of, your caste, creed, religion, whatever, one thing you can unite behind is development, right? And that is something that has been a single point agenda for Prime Minister Modi ever since he, came to power in 2014. In fact, one of his first initiatives was Swachh Bharat, which was looked down upon, condescended by so many people who had not grown up in those circumstances, right? But then, if you look at the last 11 years, it's had a huge impact on public health and other indicators as well, right? So I think, to my mind, he is one of those folks who has grown up in those circumstances. He understands poverty. He understands, what it means to, grow up socially backward, right? And so, which is why you're seeing the kind of policies as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Railway stations are good examples. You go to the railway station, what it was before he was Prime Minister and what it is now. It's super clean, and our airports are getting much better than the airports that you would see in America. And I've traveled across the world to multiple countries. Absolutely. And so many airports in US and as well as in Europe. The infrastructure that we start seeing in India is beyond and better than what you would see in those developed worlds. And all credit goes to Modi ji.
So coming back to this young person, right, 24, 25 years old, right? He or she wants to make make something in politics, right? What are the skills that are really important to develop? Let's say, they're looking at it as a 10-year path or whatever, right? What are those skills and experiences that are really important for them?
I would say think big, but focus on, a particular area, and see what transformation you can bring to that area. In that process, you also learn the steps that are involved in that. Like I said earlier, thick skin, perseverance, grit, conviction, and never enter politics with an expectation that you will become a MP or MLA. It'll take time. And always start with the idea of giving. My father would always say this to me when I was early on at a childhood. Always be in the position of giving, not in the position of taking. So I think this applies to every politician. The politician should put him or herself in the position of giving and what they can possibly do to the society to give than what they can get from the society.
Right.
It is that mindset is what is needed, I think, for any politician, young or old. And especially when you are young, you will be belittled. There would be people who would come and say, boy, I'm in this party for 25 years, 30 years. Your age is my experience. Go away, do this and whatnot. That is why, politically associated NGOs would help those youngsters, because it'll also give some freedom for them to go and do things, especially the development oriented thing. You don't have to necessarily get permissions from your political bosses. One of the things that you would see constantly in politics is the banners in flex boards, where whose photos in what size, whose name is where, and whether it is, at the upper half or lower half and whatnot. You would have missed accidentally someone's photo, and you have to, the thing that you have to take on for would be, it's too much.
Yeah.
So my suggestion, and that is what I tried as well. It's not necessarily that, it was, I wasn't using Voice of Tenkasi as a political tool. But whatever I wanted to do, the level of autonomy and independence that we wanted to have, and we could possibly do through that. So, as long as you're connected to the ground, connected to the people, there are a number of times that you would have to go and attend their marriages, the ceremonies at their families, and be with them when it is most needed, when they are in difficult times, and being, showing up to the places, even when if it is not your liking. Those are the things that is needed. That is how most of the politicians, especially in rural setup, are measured. They're not necessarily looking for whether you brought in a change or a development and whatnot. They are actually looking for whether you were there, whether you were present when they needed most. It is unlike how politicians in US, for an example, they would be measured by how many jobs they brought in, how many developmental aspects that they brought in and whatnot. They don't necessarily expect you to be present in every marriage, for an example. But here that is important. So getting accustomed to the cultural expectation of the area that you're going to work in, and understanding that place and trying to bring a change in that while traveling along with your senior leaders. That is important.
Right.
I often see people quitting, going from one party to another just because they didn't. You would have gone to the senior official's home, and you would not have been seen by him or her, and they suddenly come out and say, "I'm quitting this party and I'm going to another." I see a recent example in Coimbatore. Who was office bearer in a latest entrance party, and she would suddenly go to another party because she felt she was not respected. It's a like I said, it's a marathon. Be prepared.
It's a really difficult job to be a politician, right? I mean, the few people that I know of, they work all the time, right? Your time is not your time anymore. Right, you work all the time, and there is a certain rooted intelligence that you develop by being with the people, right? One last question on this, and then we'll move on to another fascinating aspect of your life, deep tech and so on. What does the common person not understand about politicians, right? Because if I were to just poll someone on the road, they'll say, these guys are absolutely corrupt, they're inefficient, they're whatever, right? I mean, that's the typical caricature that they paint for an average politician. What is the person not getting about politicians?
Especially when a politician is successful, and if he or she is delivering results, people would start to think that so-and-so can make a difference, so-and-so can solve your problem. So there's a lot of expectation, and sometimes they would see you as the only, the means to resolve their problem. So in my example, in my case, every day people would start showing up at my home at 6:30 in the morning. There would be days that by the time I finish seeing them, it would be 1 p.m. in the afternoon. There would be every day there would be at least 10 to 15 groups of people that would show up my home. And I'm not an MLA, I'm not an MP, I'm not in government and whatnot. I'm just a district president for a party. And even before I was a district president, this used to be the case because I was trying my best to solve their issues, resolve the issues, and find a solution either through whatever means that I could. So, and then after that you would have to go around, go places. You end up spending long hours. You would not have any privacy in your life, and especially when you become a popular person, your bedroom is the only probably the private place for you. So you cannot, you can't have your own. You don't own your time. You don't own your schedule. There are a number of things that you would have planned for doing that day. That's you may not be able to. But oftentimes I've seen just listening to their problem, their plight in itself. They walk out when they go, after meeting with us, they go with a level of, kind of feel that yes, I have conveyed my problem and this will be solved. Right? There is a relief in them. So prepare for long hours. Listen, and try your best to bring in a change. There are a number of times, and when you are genuine, regardless of which political party that you belong to, I think the administration will respond to it. The local administration in Tenkasi district is responding to it. For an example, a couple of days ago, I made a petition to the collector about 6 months ago to remove or relocate the Tasmak, the alcohol outlet from a very populous place. It has a bus stand at the district headquarters where the school is, hospital is, SP offices and whatnot. Although it took time, the district collector finally removed that Tasmak outlet a couple of days ago. Just reassuring. The moment people see that, let's go to him. There are a number of times that people needed medical care. I would go myself to the general hospital and talk to the doctors, and they would get immediate medical attention. The number of times there were civic issues that was pending for quite some time, and I would go in person and have a discussion with the authorities, and it would be solved immediately. EB department, there are multiple issues. There was a pole broken and hanging and whatnot. I would immediately talk to them and it would be addressed. Upgrading public hospitals and whatnot. So when you make sincere attempts, the administration also response. It may not be at the speed and the size at which that you would expect the administration to respond, but it responds. So with every time you resolve an issue, there would be more hope. And when you have connects to the top officials now, for an example, for the dam issue, the 50-year-long irrigation issue that I'm talking about, as soon as I became a district president, I met with the Tamil Nadu governor and presented a petition that this is the issue and need your intervention because this is an interstate issue. People start believing that so-and-so can make happen. And also when you paint your vision, for an example, I said the only way to get development to the district is to have an airport in the district, and people were laughing at me when I first said the district needs airport. But the moment I started explaining why it is important, how it can bring job, now even the people in DMK and other parties have started appreciating. And some of them actually started purchasing land near where I thought the airport would be coming. You see how things are. But then, they start believing it. Right. So the more you make people to believe, the more people will come to you. You won't have your own life. But this is the expense or tax of being in public life. Once you are in public life, you don't have a family. You don't have yourself. And that is the dedication that you have to be, convinced. And that is the conviction that you have to have.
Right. What do you make of the bureaucracy? Because there are two camps, right? So one camp says that, look, these folks are smart, efficient, all things good, but they're hamstrung by politicians, right? I mean, their hands are tied because, some politician is signing some file and whatnot, and they're hamstrung by that, right? In their capacity to change things. Then there is this other camp that says that, look, I mean, no matter how good the politician is, ultimately the Babu has to move the file, right? And these guys can, be like that spoke in the wheel that will not move at all, right? I mean, or rather, I mean, they're the folks who won't let things happen, basically, right? So I know both of these are bit extreme. Both of these are on the ends of things, right? But where is the truth?
I see both. In the district that I operate, in the places that I go to, I see both of that. Especially the younger officers, this generation officers, they also see a lot of zeal in them to make a difference. But unfortunately, they would silently tell me, privately tell me that, sir, do this. We appreciate it, whatever you're doing, but I cannot be supporting, cannot be giving the support that you're asking for. A simple thing is like, sir, I want to go to this college and I want a government college, for an example, women only government college. I want to go on a different college I went to. I said, I want to have a workshop on career planning. Simple thing like exposing them to something like a LinkedIn where they have to look for a job and whatnot. This is a great initiative. As I understand, our students do not have this exposure. I would love for you to do this, but sorry, sir, I cannot allow you to hold it in a government college because you belong to so-and-so party, right? But why don't you do it at outside, the college, sir? So there is an intention that something has to happen. But also I see, I've seen government offices where regardless of, I recently installed solar panel in my home, and even to get that meter installed, I had myself was demanded money, right? Knowing, they are demanding money from a district president of a party who is ruling at the center. So this is corruption. So corruption is everywhere, whether it is the officials doing or whether it is someone is asking them to do, is very, very, very prevalent. And I do see some officers who are, straightforward and they are against all of these. But the whole system is, and this is the transformative change has to happen in a holistic way, and that is possible only if at the topmost man who is a man, he or she, who is ruling the state, has desire and conviction to make that transformation happen. But unfortunately, whether we like it or not, everyone is after winning election, and election these days are about, cash for vote is what we see. People can deny it, but I know, I've seen it firsthand, and when everybody is about winning election and not bringing jobs, right? What else we do? And this is where I think
possible for a person to win elections without all of that stuff, because the impression one gets also is that you could be doing fantastic work, but people are kind of short-sighted, right? The circumstances are such, right? Let's put it that way, right? And they feel that someone who's doing good for them right now in this moment may be worth a lot more than someone who's probably going to do something or may not be able to do something a couple of years down the line, right? So
I'll tell you this. Someone like Kamarajar was defeated in Tamil Nadu. Okay. What else? What more do I say? So there are maybe people who won election out of their sheer credentials, but it is actually the party that is winning, unfortunately so far. Individuals winning an election has become very rare. Individuals may be getting a lot of support and getting a lot of votes, but getting votes is not necessarily winning an election, right? So people, especially the youngsters, have to start thinking about who they want to really align with, right? They have to be think beyond to some extent beyond the party line, and also they should be thinking about who is that candidate they really want to choose from, and they have to have a conversation. They have to force the candidate to have a conversation with them, and that happens in a country like US if you look at it. In US, for an example, the candidate is not someone who is actually nominated by the party. There is primary election where people have to contest within the party in order to be getting the seat to run the election, right? So there's no such thing in India. It is actually the party that actually, one fine day announce a candidate, so-and-so will be the candidate. And then there would be people who would be working hard in the field, and he or she wouldn't be a candidate, and someone else who were nowhere connected to the land would be suddenly parachuted and given the candidature. So there has to be a systematic change as well here. Seeing where things are. But I am always positive thinker, and I would remain hopeful that there is change happening. I think things will become for better.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to another chapter of your life, another facet, I would say. A few months back, the minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, made this remark at one of the startup conventions that we seem to be focused more on 7-minute grocery delivery and whatever else, right? Than building some real deep tech innovation, right? While I do feel that 7-minute grocery delivery also takes innovation, I kind of get the larger point that he was making, right? Which is that where is the AI startups, where is the robotic startups, where is all of the deep tech stuff coming out of India, right? I mean, hardly anything. You've been someone, who've spent more than a couple of decades in this field, right?
Right.
What do you think it'll take for us to develop deep tech innovation and talent in India?
First of all, I would completely agree with what Honorable Minister has said. I think, in my opinion, he was not necessarily belittling on anyone. He was only expressing his frustration and hope, and that someday sooner we should be having all those deep tech startups and technologies in India, which is a good thing. It was a whack. That is how I see it. One of the things, if you have to ask, why is there not a GE in India, for an example? There are powerhouses, business powerhouses in India, which is like, in Bombay, the likes of, I wouldn't name, but, they've been existing for 50 years, 60 years, and they could have easily become a GE. Unfortunately, it has been in our culture that we would be a trader, we would be a trading house, we would be importing things. At the best, we would be assembling and rebranding and selling, or we would be importing and selling it. That is how it was. And this is in a country which had the likes of Taxila and Nalanda University and whatnot. His country was never lack of creative ideas or the thought leaders and whatnot. It always had. But
even now, if you look at Silicon Valley, or
25% of them are Indians. Name it any company, about 25% of them are Indians. So I think the problem was lack of focus on R&D by the private, corporate companies. The R&D had been restricted to the likes of Indian Institute of Science or DRDO or C-DAC and whatnot, who are not actually, commercial players. They make technologies, and their charter is not to go and sell it, right? So what we lacked is for these big conglomerates, big companies, to invest and invest in R&D and focus on R&D. That is what was lagging. The other thing that was lagging is industry academia partnership in India. Much of the big name companies in Bay Area, if you look at it, actually came out from, say, the likes of Stanford, for an example. Right? It would be a group of students who would be, Google came that way, Facebook came that way, and you name it, right? So they would be students, they would be starting something in the garage, and then suddenly it become a big company. So the whole ecosystem was encouraging for them to have a close tie-up with the reputed research institute and bring them out as a product. We don't have that. A strong industry and academia partnership is lacking. Emphasis on R&D by the corporate companies is lacking. We never, even in the software industry, India is known for software. I can think of only Zoho as a company who's actually is a product company, software product company, and selling worldwide. Everybody else is, for the most part, is a services company. We are consultant, we are software consultant, right? So we have the brain, we have the ability. It was a lack of, and I wouldn't blame government for this, because the government had been developing all those technologies within DRDL and ISRO and whatnot, because we could, create a rocket, we could create a satellite at one tenth of the cost of what those players would be doing. So, and we were actually from the likes of DRDO, some of the technologies were going to industry, whether it is in heart surgery, whether it is medicine, whether it is, alloys and manufacturing, metal manufacturing, no doubt those are all going. I visited IAC a couple of weeks ago. I went to another, the likes of C-DAC, and I was amazed with the kind of research that is happening there. But why are they not coming out as a product? How many industries are actually reaching out to them and, making an intent to make those as products? So, there has to be a concerted effort. We have to think beyond just P&L. These big companies have to think beyond P&L. And that is, it is important. P&L is important, but there has to be focus on R&D. Right. We have to be thinking about, building our own, AI system, for an example, right? LLM, for an example. We have to be thinking about building our own CPUs, our own data centers, because, it is vital for a country like India. And one of the things that we did successfully is to export the topsoil. And we have to make it conducive for those brains to come back to India and do the work here, right? Whether it is the infrastructure, the civic communities, right? And many of them want to be in their rural towns. They don't necessarily want to come and settle in Bangalore or Mumbai or Chennai and Kolkata. They would want to go back to, say, Mangalore or Kodagu or wherever it is, right? Hebal or Madurai, wherever it is. So we have to bring those civic communities to the rural places so that we encourage them. There is an incentive for them to have a joyful life with their families, go to temple or mosque, wherever it is in the evening, and play in the pond and still do some research. That kind of things have to happen. And Zoho as a company is actually pioneering it. If you think of Zoho's security chief architect for their entire Zoho security suite is actually living in a small town called Peraurani. He is actually coding from sitting under a coconut tree today. And he is actually writing the code that is going across the world. And that is the largest incentive that gentleman is getting. There is no amount of money that you can possibly give him to move to, Bangalore or Chennai or even to the Bay Area, right? So we have to be thinking holistically, both government, but more importantly, the private sector. To incentivize these people, bring them and focus on R&D and think about making products. Stop importing things like this mic or the LED lamp and whatnot from China. So
atrocious.
So we should. And unfortunately, we would be looking, as a businessman, they would be looking, okay, how much this might cost if I were to import from, say, Japan or Taiwan, and how much it would take for me. Oh, it's only about 7% margin, then let me not do it. Let me just import and sell it. Right, so that's been the mindset. We have to see what we can innovate, how we can produce it even in a low cost area. Especially if you are importing things from the likes of Swiss and German, rice mill, a modern rice mill. Think about it, a modern rice mill. That equipment is coming from Switzerland and Germany. For what? People are paying 30 crores in advance and deposit with those manufacturers and waiting for 6 months to get a modern rice mill. And the cost of, boiling that rice and making into a rice thing is 60 rupees per pack. You would deposit 30 lakh for 60 rupees, per bag kind of return. So your return is really like 4 or 5%, and even if at best efficiency. Right. So, he was right. The Honorable Minister was right. We should be actually, instead of importing GPUs from the likes of NVIDIA, we should be, if not now, it should be in a few years from now, we should be actually, if not exporting, we should have our own thing. That's what he is after. Drones, for an example, and sensors, for an example. Just basically vital in everything. Agriculture, farming machineries, for an example. Engine. Right? How many engine producers that we have in India over these many years? We made cars, we make tractors, we make bikes, but we import all of those engines from wherever it is, right? Never produced in India. What is it a rocket science when we can make a cryogenic engine and, send to moon?
Yeah. So why do you think it hasn't happened though? I mean, because auto ancillaries, for example, huge market, right? India's done really, really well. Why can't we just backward integrate a little bit and like produce some of the more fundamental stuff?
Risk
right?
takers, I'm saying risk taking in terms of, in my opinion.
So how do we create those incentives? You know, if you were to think of, let's say, 2 or 3 policy measures, right, that can encourage risk taking, that can encourage people to be inventors rather than traders, let's say.
Prime Minister Modi has already started in this path. I mean, between the PLI scheme, for an example, DLI scheme, for an example, National Semiconductor Mission with more than $10 billion, AA mission with $1.5 billion or something. And, the manufacturers have started coming to India. The iPhone is being manufactured in India now in a big way, as we see. Not just the iPhone, all the components that is going into iPhone. I'm just picking that as an example. So we have started on the trajectory thanks to Modi ji, and also many other things. The internship scheme to create employment, for an example, right? And then in terms of number of areas that he has started, I think we are on the right track. Although it has started, it's a bit late. It should have happened about 25 years ago, all these initiatives. But finally, this is happening, and I think soon, in a 5 to 10 years time frame, we will also become a manufacturing powerhouse with Modi ji's leadership. We just need Modi ji to complete this term and another term. That's all, and India will be on the right track.
Right. What do you think though about skilling in particular, right? Because I do feel that education in India, it doesn't really produce job-ready graduates in some sense, right? There's an overinflation of degrees, if you ask me. Not everyone who's got an engineering degree is an engineer. Right. I'm not much of an engineer myself, right? Any code that I did was about 15, 16 years back. But fresh graduates, right? They're no way capable of doing stuff on the job, right? So do you think that how do we reinvent that, right? Do you think that we should revive something like the ITIs, for example, the erstwhile ITIs, teach people more basic skills and so on? Because I don't see why a 10th pass or a 12th pass can't do like a carpentry, plumbing, all of those things, and provide for the family as well, right? And perhaps upskill themselves along the way. They don't need to do a 5-year engineering degree or whatever, 4-year engineering degree.
Simply put, they are not able to do it. 10th grade and 12th graders not able to do because they are not trained. Whereas if you go to Japan or China or even to the likes of Switzerland and whatnot, and they are not necessarily, in Israel for an example, they are not necessarily engineering degree holders. They are actually trained on certain trade, whether it is a plumber, whether it is a mechanic, whether it is an electrician and whatnot, and they are actually pushed into industry through means of internship. Even in America, if you look at it, all big companies, they have an internship pipeline. The big companies the size of say Microsoft and Intel and whatnot, they would be hiring about 3 to 5% of their employees every year as a recent college graduate, and typically they come through internship. There is a close industry to academia partnership in countries like even in America as well as in the countries like Japan. The concept of internship was non-existent to a large part in India, I would say. At least I was not aware of. What students should be doing is an in-plant training for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks and whatnot when they were in third year. And these in-plant training would be for them to go and visit a factory, roam around and whatnot. It is different from having them to go and work part of that team for 3 months, 6 months and contribute to that. That way they have an understanding of what is happening. Luckily, Prime Minister Modi has initiated this internship scheme where Government of India is funding. So it's a close partnership between industry and academia, as I was saying earlier. That's the first step that we need, and we need more ITIs than more engineering colleges. I don't know. Suddenly, especially in South India, we have, I think, 1,000+ engineering colleges, and it mushroomed like anything for whatever reason, right? So it was it is harder for me to see a politician who is not owning an academic institute or engineering college. I don't know why.
Right.
Then it has become degree producing missions these colleges are, and these guys are not exposed to anything.
And you can always upskill, right? I mean, like the diploma programs, for example. I mean, diploma folks, you would get in directly to the second or third year of engineering and then upskill themselves later. I think we should get away from this concept of study for 18 years of your life and then you can start working, right?
Question is, who is going to upskill? So like I said, in my district there are 3 engineering colleges.
So which is why what I would suggest is like, you start working along the way, right? I mean, so that on the job, I mean, you kind of skill yourself. Because one thing I realized, like when I got to the refinery after my engineering, was that nothing I learned was really actually being, I mean, of course, at a certain level, yes, but it wasn't immediately applicable for me, And so I had to learn from, the technicians on the field.
True, but when you are forced, I mean, I'll compare between America and here, for an example. Once you're 15, people start working.
Yeah.
People start making money as soon as they become 15.
Yeah.
Right. Here, even after they finish college, even after they finish masters, it is their parents who are carrying their resume and knocking the door from one place to another.
Yeah.
I told you the number of people who come to me every morning. This is a set of parents also, including that. These students wouldn't be coming to me. So that you see the difference. Now, when they go to work, they may be starting to work at a gas station, a petrol bunk, or a McDonald's, or Burger King, and whatnot. In that process, as they start earning, they also start thinking about, okay, what can I possibly learn while I was at school, at college? What trade that I can possibly do? An additional thing now, I can become a mechanic and earn little more money than being a gas filler, for an example, or selling at Burger King, right? So get into that system is not, we actually pamper as a society in India, we pamper our child.
Right.
We want to provide them everything. Even after their marriage, we want to provide them. And let's be realistic. I see it firsthand. Even after marriage, their parents would want to start a business, a retail shop or something, to the boy just to make that boy eligible to get a girl. This happens. You would have finished college, you would have been an engineer or a doctor or whatever. Always pampering for it. Let them to go to the field. I mean, I've heard of and I've seen examples from Israel, for an example. Even before they would go to college, after high school or higher secondary, they have to be in military for a couple of years. And after the 2 years of military, they would be asked to go around the world for 6 months. They have to backpack, and they would be given some meager amount of money from whatever they earned as a stipend while at military. And a lot of people I've seen, they are roaming. They was previously when I was in Bangalore.
India is one of the more popular places that they visit.
They would be actually in Bangalore roads. These are all Israelis roaming in Bangalore roads, and they would be living with meager means. It's not hi-fi hotels that they go to. It's like 100 rupees per night, that kind of hotels that they would be, motels they would be saying, they would be on the road observing and whatnot. They would be sent to, similar to India, they would go to South America, the likes of Brazil, Chile and whatnot. Then they come back and go to college. By the time they would have learned a lot of trade. And these people, I mean, everyone who was in Israel, actually high producing individual. Right. Whereas think about as a society, I'm not blaming our things. I'm just making, let's be honest about it, right? How long are we going to pamper our kids? It's difficult for me whenever I see, pampering a boy. Last week, he was a retired bank officer who was at a senior level at a state bank or something. He came to me with a resume, and this is 35-year-old boy. He is married with 2 kids, and he is jobless. Right, and he is asking for a job. And he is an engineer. And then the first question I'm asking, why are you here, sir? Why is not your son? And how is that person getting married with 2 kids, and the dad is still roaming around with his resume for job? Right, so that is how our society is. I'm not blaming anyone, but this is Stop pampering and ask them to be on their own and make them to go and earn something. In America, people are, as soon as they are 18, they are expected to work. I had my son, I was reasonably well off when I was in US, but as soon as my son was 17 or something, I asked him to go and work with the moving crew, people who shipped the household furniture from one place to another. He would do the heavy lifting and all of that just to earn 20 rupees, $20 per day. And he learned in the hard way. I mean, I used to tell him that this is how I used to toil when I was small. He used to say, my daughter would say, I know you are poor, I know your dad was poor, that's why you didn't have chappal. Now when I make them to work, they realize what it is like. So I would have him to mow my lawn. It's a big house with the front yard, backyard and whatnot. I would have him to mow my lawn, and I would pay him $3 for 1 hour of work, and he would actually collect all of that and keep all of that together until the Christmas time and whatnot. So, but he learned it the hard way. It is harder to earn money. My daughter with her friends, when they were 5th grade, they would set up lemonade station, for an example, on weekends, and they would sell lemonades. I would be making $1 and $2 and whatnot. And I was, what did he learn? Dad, I learned marketing. Right, so that kind of thing doesn't exist here. I mean, how often a wealthy parent or a middle class parent would send their kid to go and something like what I did, for an example, to ask him to go and go with the moving crew and lift the heavy wooden furniture and whatnot. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly don't give our children the independence to think that way, right? And also there is this stigma about doing certain work, right? There is no dignity of labor in that sense, right? And all of us know, like, jobs teach you more than the specific skill that you need to complete the job, right? I mean, you learn how to work with people, how you work with your boss, how you manage your boss, right? How you manage people around you, and so on and so forth. Customer support, very important, no matter what you do later in life, and so on, right? I think certainly those are some of those values that we can definitely learn from the US and the West for sure, right? You started Tenkasi Semiconductors, right? What was what is the primary reason? And you founded this with someone that we all admire, Mr. Sridhar Vembu as well, yes. Right? So what is the vision for Tenkasi Semiconductors?
Up to Tenkasi Semiconductor is one of the initiatives within an umbrella of things that we, under Sridhar's patronage, that we are doing. Our primary goal is to bring employment, especially for the women, for an example. In Tenkasi district, if you look at it, out of the 15 lakhs population, I think about 2 to 2.5 lakh women are BD rollers. And with all the health hazard and whatnot, then they would be rolling the BD for a whole day and would be making only 210 rupees or something. So we want to find a respectable means for them to have a regular income in a very respectable way. So we have initiated a number of things. One of them is called Kutravai, which is basically now upskilling them, reskilling them, and they become making articrafts, making food products, and we want them to be, instead of BD rollers, we want them to be rolling a motor coil, for an example. We are doing research on that. So Kotravai is one of the initiatives that we have started, and that is launching this week. We have also initiated what is called an incubator called Walai, the plantain. A number of startups are housed within that. One of them is a drone startup and a digital marketing startup. Another startup is about AR, VR glass, and there are startups who are experimenting on printing and whatnot. All of that is happening. So as part of this collective initiative, while I am at all of these, Sridhar would constantly ask me, boy, you're a semiconductor engineer, first of all, you're a semiconductor architect, you're doing all of this is fine, but where is that next CPU to power our data center. What kind of interconnects that we can, what kind of NOC that we can build. He is actually deep technical person. He's a Princeton PhD, as you know, so he's not just a software engineer, he's a hardcore technical. He's writing a compiler today, and state-of-the-art compiler, and we are eventually envisioning, having our own operating system, our own, vertically integrated CPU compiler operating system that will be powering the data center. That will be, it's a CPU, GPU, and whatnot. So Tenkasi Semiconductor came out of it, and we are in early stage now. Our goal is we are now working on building an application processor for edge computing, edge analytics, AI analytics at the edge and whatnot. So, and eventually we want to build it as a processor, what we call as a Pali processor. Pali is a language that is a compiler language that Sridhar is actually developing, and we want hardware and software interact very seamlessly. Then what is existing today in the system, there are multiple layers and the multiple levels of wastages that is happening in the network as well as in memory. We want to remove all of that and tightly integrate the hardware and software, and also have the ability to seamlessly move what a workload that would happen in software into hardware and vice versa. So we're envisioning that kind of a system that will eventually power the data center. So we want to build that kind of application processor. It's an early stage, I would say. Talking to a number of people in the industry in this, I will not be able to give much more details on what exactly we are building, but we are working on building an application processor that will eventually power big data centers.
Fantastic. So India as a deep tech destination is something that you're optimistic for, let's say in the 10-year, 15-year horizon?
Absolutely will happen. I am feeling very excited. I'm very excited about what is happening today. For an example, someone is here in Elang, near Elang. I came to know about a startup. This is, I think, someone... a team of people who are in the 20s. They're building drones that will fly in 40,000 feet. That's aerospace. That's not necessarily a drone. And head of someone who returned from UC Berkeley and doing some cancer research using dogs to screen cancer, for an example. There are good startups happening at IIT Madras, for an example. There's someone who's building flying object that will just fly a few meters away above the sea level, and that can go from continent to continent. And the size of the ship, whatever ship that you see, they are climbing, it could be the size of a football field, and that would be a game changer.
Wow.
The people are working on. I see that some people are working on efficient air conditioning machines, for an example. So these are all people who are in the 20s, and so that reassuring, and feel pretty excited about it. All we need is enough support. There is another person who is actually building demonstrated rockets from a simple launching machine and whatnot. What we need as far as deep tech is concerned is focus on semiconductor. I know that with the incentives, Semicon Mission and design-linked incentives and whatnot, the academia has probably taped out about 87 chips so far, as if I'm not mistaken. But those are all in SEL, Chandigarh, and 130 nanometer or something. We should be building chips, designing chips at the latest node, like 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer. I know there is work happening. But we also have to have it's not just designing a chip, it is not just having the ability to have something like TSMC here, but there are a number of things that go along with that. We need to have the assembly test manufacturing facilities, we need to have the burn-in chambers, we need to have the sort-in assembly, we need to have the tester units. These are the capabilities that we need. The likes of ASML and Lam Research, who are all setting up shops here, but I think they may be designing things, tapping the potential here, designing things, and maybe still selling out to the likes of TSMC and to the Israel or to America or to all the fabs. That is not going to help. So we need to have local research of those, and we need to have the equivalents of ASML and LAM research here.
Right.
Semiconductor, as we all know, is the new oil that would power anything and everything in the world. So having self-reliance in semiconductor is very, very important. We are, I feel positive about all the momentum that has built in the last 2-3 years. Yet we have a long way to go. We need a lot of industry partnership, and this is one area where it is also heavily expensive. It takes multiple millions,
Right.
50 to 100 millions to do a chip, state-of-the-art chips. Simplistically put, it will take like 7 to 10 million to do any kind of chips. Right, so it's a high barrier to entry, but that is also some level of risk taking also has to come from the private sector.
Yeah. No, I think it's bound to happen, I feel. Market corrections are great times for these kind of, leading edge technologies to surface, right? Because, if you look at the last, let's say 5 to 7 years, there was this high of SaaS, and SaaS is being disrupted now with agentic AI, all of that stuff, right? And so people are going to start looking at these technologies and innovating on that for sure, right? Going forward. AI is a big topic. Of course, whenever I talk about tech, you can't not talk about AI, right? And there too, there's a lot of talk about, how the people who control AI or the countries that control AI will actually control the world, right? Whether it is the fundamental LLMs or, whatever else, right? What is your view on it? Do you think that we're late to building an LLM? Do you think that perhaps we should focus on an application layer instead, or how do you think about it?
In a relative scheme, if you see, the last 5 years in the whole horizon is not late per se, because as soon as the computers were built, people started thinking about, or at least talking about, neural networks. LLM is another version of neural networks, and before that we had learning, auto learning, machine learning, and whatnot. It's a constant evolution. The whole OpenAI thing itself probably happened in the last 5 to 7 years. So we are not late. Think of it, semiconductor. We are behind by multiple generation, if you look at it, and we are trying to catch up there, and we will. So if we can catch up on that, writing software is not a big deal. I think a lot of work is happening. I'm aware of some of the work that is happening, in preview to some of the work that is happening. Although it is, we are a few years late, but we'll catch up, I think. I feel reasonably confident that we'll have, if not dominance, we'll have an equal footing when it comes to AI pretty soon.
Okay. On that very optimistic note, thank you so much, Ananthanji, for coming to the studio and recording this podcast with us. It's truly an inspiring story. I think more people should hear about you, hear about your work. And of course, I do hope that, a lot more brothers and sisters from our tier 2, tier 3 villages, cities and villages, realize that nothing can stop them if they put their heart and mind to it, right? And they take inspiration from you. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I just want to finish it with one note, because you talked about AI. For me, even before we build our own AI, I would like India to stop importing from the likes of Japan and make things like, a speaker, a Bluetooth speaker, an LED lamp and whatnot. These have to become cottage industry in our villages. That Absolutely. I think is the first step before we even we solve rocket science, and that is what is probably going to have a mass impact in terms of employment creation, especially for bridging the urban and rural divide. And in Switzerland and Germany and in China, if LED making or a Bluetooth assembly is done at home, it's done as a small cottage industry, why not in India? And that is where I would like the industry to be thinking, let's first solve this problem, let's make those as cottage industries, and while we also think about artificial intelligence, data centers, rocket science and whatnot. And that is what will fundamentally change and transform our society and our villages. And that would be my call to action. And going back to making changes and transformation, it cannot be done by a single person. It cannot be done by money alone. If money is by means, a lot many things would have happened. What it takes is thousands of good-hearted people. So I invite all of the youngsters out there to take at least one day in your week or 2 days in a month. Go to nearby places. Go to the towns that you are in. Go to schools, colleges. Especially if you are nearer to village, go to that place and connect them to opportunities that they are not aware of. It may be teaching them some skills, some tutoring, or some try upskilling them and make them aware of what is happening. So that requires thousands of people, thousands of youngsters.
Absolutely.
That would be my call to action in this podcast. So no one can do it alone. It takes a village. It takes thousands of youngsters' hands to build a new India. So thank you so much, Roshan. Thanks for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic clarion call for all of our listeners. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. If you like this podcast, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'll see you on another episode. Thank you.